In the last 2 years, we've disbursed over $100 million worth of loans. There's a huge amount of benefit with being a second-time entrepreneur.
皆さんこんにちは。世界のスタートアップ情報を発信するスタートアップバックパッカーです。今回はですね、創業2年で150億円規模の融資をお客さんに提供する融資事業を行っているような面白いスタートアップさんなんで、インタビューさせていただきました。インドでなぜこんなに短期間で成長できたのかっていうポイントと、で2つ目に実際にその日本の投資家とかからも資金調達できているので、なぜそれだけ資金調達早くできて成長できたのかみたいなところも伺っていきます。
Now I'm here with Aditya, co-founder of Niro.
Niro's thesis is essentially to help mid to large-sized consumer internet platforms to monetize their customers through credit distribution. The way that we do that is we believe these consumer internet platforms have three super valuable assets. They have data, they have distribution, and they have engagement. And we believe that if we offer credit products to the end customers of these consumer internet platforms, that we will ultimately be able to see greater scale with lower risk. What that means is ultimately larger profit pools for us to share with the consumer internet platforms and to help them essentially get closer to profitability. We've been around for a little over 2 years now. We've raised 2 rounds of capital. We're just closing our third. In the last 2 years, we've disbursed over $100 million worth of loans. We disperse about $9 million of loans per month to the end customers of these consumer internet platforms.
Very impressive. So you've been running this for 2 years and now you're raising for a pre-series B, right? Like that's a rapid, I think, growth. What were your difficulties on growing your startup to a pre-series B company?
Look, I think the first thing that I'll say is there's a huge amount of benefit with being a second-time entrepreneur, right? Especially in the same space, because you've obviously made your share of mistakes and you try to learn from those. But I think more importantly, you've actually built a network, right? And what that helps you do is short circuit a lot of things that would ordinarily otherwise take a lot of time. So in the context of our business, we're a B2B2C platform and we don't use our own capital to lend. We work with lenders to lend. So as a result, right, we have the end customer to think about and products to build for the end consumer. We have the consumer internet platform to pitch to. We have the supplier of capital to manage. And we have our internal and external forces like our investors, etc., etc. So the complexity of the business is actually reasonably high, right, from that perspective. But I think what has really helped us is, like I said, many of us have been entrepreneurs in the past and learning from those mistakes. But B, having built these networks to actually realize how each stakeholder sees perceived value, and B, get access to, for example, the lenders and the consumer internet platforms on day zero to actually be able to start, as opposed to spend a year finding your first customer. So I think that's one sort of theme, which is all to largely do with having been an entrepreneur. I think everything else really is sort of par for the course and becomes a little bit more natural or intuitive if you've been an entrepreneur for more than a certain amount of time.
I see. How were you actually able to get funded from the Japanese investors?
Yeah, so that's how it started. Two of our investors, GMO and Rebright, I've known since my previous startup. So they never invested in the previous startup, but we met maybe multiple times and I guess perhaps built relationships over the years. Right? That was a good starting point, right? I think, but in general, raising capital is a function of multiple things, but in particular, the quality of the team that you've built, and we've been very, very lucky to build a very strong team, the thesis that you have, the timing, and if any, the traction that you're able to show. And I think on all four of those, at least when we started out, we scored quite highly. So I think that's where our seed investor, which was Elevar, drew comfort from that. And then we were able to use that capital to show a certain amount of momentum, which then fortunately excited, the likes of GMO and Rebright and MSN80 to sort of invest.
I see. Did you see some differences with, talking to, from an Indian founder perspective, what are the differences between local VCs in India and Japanese VCs?
I mean, I think it's hard to say. I don't think I have enough context at this point, but I think I do see a little bit more patience perhaps from Japanese investors. I think they have slightly longer holding periods, especially the corporate VCs who don't have fund structures. Just don't have that pressure of, look, I need to try and get out in 4, 5, 6 years. That is definitely one trait. I also think that a lot of Japanese capital also follows other Japanese capital. Is very incrementally, you're seeing more people get comfortable with India. But I think it's very rare to find somebody writing their first check into India without having an existing investor from Japan on the cap table, right? And based on my recent trip there, at least, I think the excitement levels for India are super high.
What would be your future goals be? Global expansion, or is this a local problem you're trying to solve? And also on some exit strategies?
So I think the plans are, intermediate plan is, in the next 18 months or so, we'd like to become profitable. right? And if we can do that at a sort of $20-25 million revenue mark, and we can do it in the time frame that we specified, we would be super happy with having gotten. Once we're profitable, I think then the plan is to work towards scale, right? To really work towards scale and potentially at somewhere between a $70-100 million revenue run rate. IPOs become a real possibility in India, and this is a fairly new phenomenon, right? You haven't seen too many companies from the startup ecosystem be able to successfully IPO in the past, right? That's changing rapidly though. But overall, I think many opportunities would present themselves. For example, strategics looking to enter India, existing financial institutions, consumer internet platforms looking to buy you out. Many of those things will come. I think you just have to be clear about how much value you've created and how much you're willing to leave on the table.
Okay. And are you expanding globally already, or is it?
Theoretically, this is a problem in many other places as well. But for us, the market in India is just very, very large. And we've seen examples of other companies that have tried to expand, let's say in the region, Southeast Asia, and it proves to be a distraction if the core business is not fully set and sort of running smoothly. That's been the learning from some of our peers, and I think we're just very, very focused on making this work domestically. Maybe in the future we would think about what lies beyond our borders. But
last question would be nice if I could know who you would be interested in connecting in Japan.
So I think for me and for many startups, I think the pool of capital that exists at the Series B, Series C stage is super exciting. Capital is definitely one. Beyond that, I think there is a lot of depth in sort of product learning from a financial services point of view. There are definitely learnings there that one can take. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you so much, Aditya.
いやー面白かったですね。やはりあそこまで成長できたというのは、彼自身と彼のチームメンバーがそもそも連続起業家で2社目の創業だった。しかも同じ分野で前に起業したことがあるということで、つながりとか知見がすでにあったところがポイントだったのかなと思います。インドにいると、連続起業がかなりいて、本当に数年でバンバン畳んでるような方も結構いたりはするんですけど、その企業カルチャーが今インドはすごいなっていうのを現地にいた時も実感しました。で、今回インタビューした彼も企業の経験のある方ということでですね、うまくいってるということでした。で、結構インドの方が話してるとリスク許容が結構強いというか、でしかも結構夢を持っていろいろチャレンジするみたいな国民的な性質、もちろん人口も大きいんで全員がそうではないんですけど、国民性みたいなところも企業カルチャーに反映されてるのかなというのは思いますね。はい、今回は以上になります。こういった面白い海外スタートアップ情報をどんどん上げておりますので、ぜひチャンネル登録いただけると嬉しいです。皆さんありがとうございました。